Billionaire's shocking discovery. Maid slept on floor with baby. What he found will haunt you. In the heart of New York City's skyscrapers, a world where wealth and power collide, something terrifying lurked beneath the polished surface. A billionaire's opulent penthouse held secrets deeper than money. A baby, innocent and vulnerable, lay in the chilling embrace of midnight. But it wasn't just the child who fascinated everyone. It was the maid, a shadow in the grand halls, who chose to sleep on the floor beside the crib. It was a sight that made the billionaire's blood run cold. Why would she do such a thing? As he opened the door that night, he was ready to drift into a realm of luxury and untouchable riches. Instead, he was struck by a harsh reality. There she was, curled up on the floor, her thin blanket barely concealing her. His breathing quickened. What kind of desperation drove a woman to such depths? Was it love? Was it fear? The pinch in his chest grew tighter. He stepped closer. Shadows danced in the dim light, and an eerie silence wrapped around the room like a thick fog. It struck him like a punch to the gut. The child was not just hers, but also the key to a mystery that could unravel everything he thought he knew. Whispers of betrayal danced just beyond reach. A maid, a baby, and secrets that clawed at the edges of sanity. What if the truth about that baby threatened to destroy more than just a life? Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message that sent chills down his spine. There was more to both the maid and baby than he could ever imagine. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The billionaire's chest tightened with uncertainty. He knew he had to dig deeper. He promised himself he must uncover the truth, no matter how dark. But as he turned to leave, he caught a glimmer of something unusual on the floor, a tiny locket, half buried under the blanket. What did it mean? Was it a sign, a clue? Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a twisted tale where riches could not shield them from a haunting past. His heart pounded as he picked up the locket, its delicate chain cold against his fingers. The weight of it symbolized more than just jewelry. It felt like the echo of untold stories wrapped around his wrist. What secrets did it hold? He flipped it open, revealing a faded photograph inside, a woman and a little girl, both smiling yet shrouded in a layer of sorrow that the billionaire couldn't shake. Suddenly, the air felt heavy, filled with unanswered questions. Who were they? Why did the maid possess such a personal keepsake? A sense of urgency gripped him. He had to know more, had to confront the maid while the shadows still lingered. He stepped into the adjacent room, his mind racing with possibilities. The baby slept soundly, unaware of the tangled lives surrounding her. The maid was still on the floor, shoulders rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of her breathing. He was torn between awe of her devotion and a chilling fear of what lay beneath it. "Wake up," he commanded softly, his voice cutting through the silence. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Confusion danced across her face as she took in the scene, a mix of embarrassment and vulnerability flooding every corner of the space. "What happened?" she asked, still groggy, her voice a whisper. "I found this." He held up the locket, watching her eyes widen. For the briefest moment, the walls around her heart crumbled, revealing the raw emotion behind her stoic demeanor. Who are the people in this picture? Her fingers trembled as they reached for the locket, but then hesitated, as if pulling away from her own past. They were my family, she murmured, choking on her words. "Your family?" He leaned closer, keenly aware of the heart-wrenching emotion seeping into her voice. "What happened to them?" Tears glistened in her eyes, blurring her vision. "They are gone, lost to a life I can't escape." The billionaire felt the weight of her grief curling around them like tendrils of smoke. But how does this connect to the baby? Her breath hitched, and a flash of fear crossed her features. I thought if I stayed close, if I protected her, maybe I could protect myself too." His mind raced, gathering strands of information. Concealed truths, haunting pasts, interwoven destinies. A million questions buzzed in his head, fighting for attention. Protect from what? From those who came to take her, she replied, her voice dropping to a whisper almost too soft to hear. The darkness is coming for her for me. I had no choice but to hide. Chills slid down his spine. The air crackled with impending danger. You can't be serious. What do you mean? Suddenly, the lights flickered, illuminating their faces in a strobing flash of light. Was it just a malfunction, or a warning? The billionaire felt his heart race, primal instinct kicking in. He sensed a looming threat, an encroaching darkness threatening to swallow them whole. He took a step closer to her, urgency and resolve hardening his gaze. We need to leave. Now. There's no time to waste. But just then, the front door creaked open, revealing a tall figure silhouetted in the hallway. Someone had entered their domain, shattering the fragile cocoon of safety they had wrapped around themselves. The maid gasped, dread stretching her features. No, it can't be. As the figure stepped into the light, the revelation struck like a thunderbolt. The billionaire's heart plummeted. Whoever stood before them could hold the key to their entire truth or their destruction. What twisted game was beginning to unfold? What did this new arrival want? His thoughts raced as darkness gathered around them. It was only the beginning of a nightmare where every choice could lead to horror. The figure stepped into the faint light, an unsettling calm contrasting with the rush of anxiety filling the room. Every heartbeat echoed in the billionaire's ears as he scrutinized the shadowed face inching forward. Samuel, the voice was hauntingly familiar, like the ghost of a past he tried to escape. The woman's eyes locked onto his, and they burned with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. It was a name he hadn't heard in years, one he thought was buried along with the memories of a life he'd left behind. Veronica? He breathed, hardly able to process the sight of her after all this time. She looked different, older, shadows under her eyes echoing the pain that filled the air. What are you doing here? The maid's gaze flickered between them, her fear palpable, a silent plea for protection wrapping around her like a shroud. Stay away from her, the billionaire warned, stepping protectively in front of the maid. Oh, don't be ridiculous, Samuel. I'm not here for her, Veronica replied with a dark smile. But her eyes were anything but playful. I'm here for you. Confusion twisted his stomach. What do you want? His voice cracked, heavy with the weight of dread. I know you've been asking questions. She took a step closer, her presence a mixture of charm and menace that was hard to resist but impossible to trust. Searching for answers about your past. But some things are better left alone. Outside, the wind howled as if echoing their turmoil. The shadows danced around them, creeping along the walls and suffocating the warmth in the room. The air was thick with secrets and regret, each breath heavier than the last. The maid squeezed his arm, her grip like iron, anchoring him in that moment of impending chaos. No, don't listen to her, she cried out, panic spilling from her. You don't understand. But Veronica only chuckled softly, the sound chilling him to the bone. You're too blind to see, Sam. Or maybe you just don't want to. The child, she is tied to all of this. I'd hate to see anything happen to her, because you're too stubborn to see the truth. The man's pulse quickened. What truth? He demanded, rage simmering. What do you know about the baby? About the darkness you spoke of? Veronica stepped back, as if absorbing his fury. You first. What do you know about this maid? Do you trust her? Or is she simply another pawn in this game? His mind raced back to the secrets swirling in the shadows of his life. He had always been the player, never the pawn. Fear and instinct leaped through him now. We don't need you here, Veronica. Leave us. But as he spoke, uncertainty clung to his thoughts. The maid glanced at him, her eyes filled with desperation. I am protecting her, just as you've protected your past. We have to go before it's too late. As if summoned by her words, a sudden crash rang out from another room, followed by heavy footsteps approaching. His instincts screamed for action. Tom was running out. Run, he urged the maid, pushing her toward the back door, while keeping his eyes locked on Veronica. I'll hold her off. No, Veronica shouted, her voice slicing the air sharply. You're making a terrible mistake. But it was too late. They had to escape. The combined dread of an unknown enemy and the weight of old choices pressed down on him. He glanced back at Veronica, searching for any hint of truth within her calculated words, but found nothing. The footsteps grew louder. There was no time to waste. The darkness was already closing in as the baby stirred awake. The clock was ticking down. He grabbed the maid's arm, urging her onward, ready to confront whatever awaited them just outside. What else could the shadows reveal? What awaited them in the past that fused their fates? The door was ajar, and the terror wrapping around them grew thicker. As they bolted down the hallway, the billionaire couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just running from the danger. Something darker, far more personal, was glaring back at him from the depths of his unresolved past. What was it that lurked behind the corner, waiting to be unleashed? They ran through the dimly lit corridor, breath ragged, the sound of their hurried footsteps swallowed by the oppressive silence. Shadows lined the walls like dark sentinels, and Samuel felt eyes on him, pressing against his skin. The maid kept glancing over her shoulder, her expression fraying, but they had no choice. The past was clawing at his heels, eager to drag him back into its icy embrace. "Samuel," she gasped, her voice a hurried whisper. "We can't go out that way. I know another exit." He hesitated only for a moment, heard the echo of Veronica's laughter curling around them, the laughter of someone who knew his deepest fears. "Lead the way," he barked, forcing dread from his mind. He couldn't afford to focus on the woman who had haunted so many of his dreams, and now stood too close to the reality of his life. As they darted through a side door, he felt a rush of cool air. Freedom beckoned, but that exhilaration was short-lived. The maid propelled him into a hidden staircase, descending deeper into the bowels of the mansion. It was his family's ancestral home, a place woven with darkness, a treasure trove of memories he tried desperately to forget. The air turned musty, thick with panic as they reached a landing. Just below, dull thuds reverberated off the walls. Footsteps. He strained to listen, heart thumping against his ribcage. "Who's down there?" he whispered. "Someone who shouldn't be here," she replied, her face now ashen. "We need to hurry. The old wine cellar opens up into the woods." Samuel grasped her arm, urgency radiating between them. "What about the baby? We can't leave her." Leave her with a startled gasp cut her off as the footsteps grew nearer. They were almost upon them. He tried to think fast. 1,000 scenarios played in his mind as time slowed. Rough voices echoed, menacing and demanding, reverberating through his bones like the toll of a funeral bell. He had escaped this place once before, but it seemed fate had woven his life back into the tapestry of horror. "We have to go now." He pulled her towards a heavy wooden door. It creaked open slowly, a protesting groan that seemed almost human. They stepped inside just as the echo of footsteps cascaded over the threshold behind them. The underbelly of the mansion was littered with remnants of forgotten wealth, dusty bottles, cobwebs, and shadows. He caught a glimpse of the old cellar filled with crumbling crates. It felt like stepping into a tomb, the air choked with secrets. "Samuel there?" the maid urged, pointing towards a staircase leading up again. "That way. If we get through the cellar door, we can reach the woods." He nodded, urging her forward. As they hurried down the narrow corridor, the wooden beams held a weight of stories. But one truth screamed at him louder than any whisper from the past. Veronica had come back for something, and she was more dangerous than he remembered. What does she mean about the child? His question hung in the air, heavy and unsheathed. "I don't know." She spun around, frustration boiling beneath her fear. "But you have to trust me. She is not the only one tied to the past. They're coming for other reasons we can't afford to ignore." The frantic look in her eyes sent ice through his veins. Just then, a loud crash echoed behind them, splintering the old wood. It felt like the walls were collapsing in on him. They could break through, escape, but his legs felt rooted in the earth, torn between flight and the turmoil spinning in his mind. "Go," she shouted, and he sprang into action, bracing for whatever awaited them in that doorway, the doorway that might lead to salvation or seal their doom. As they burst through the cellar door into the unnaturally starlit night, Samuel glanced back. The darkness shifted, and the air crackled with dread. What secrets awaited him in those shadows? What awaited them in the woods beyond? A rustle came from the trees. Something was there, and it was watching. Samuel, the maid's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of dread. Whatever shadows awaited them, they couldn't hide. Forever. The truth was edging closer, and he could no longer run. What if the past had come back not just to haunt him, but to claim what was his? The woods loomed ahead, dark and forbidding, swallowing any trace of light. Samuel's pulse spiked as he felt the weight of unseen eyes creeping closer, suffocating him with anticipation. The maid tugged his arm, pulling him deeper into the embracing darkness. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice barely concealing the desperation that flickered just beneath the surface. He stumbled over twigs and roots, the chill of the night air wrapping around him like a sinister shroud. A low growl came from the underbrush, a reminder that dangers lurked even outside the mansion's walls. Samuel risked a glance behind them and froze. Shadows danced between the trees, silent predators lying in wait. "Why did you take me down there?" he demanded, rage lighting a fire in his chest. "What is the real story?" Her face, pale and wild, turned to him. "Because you have to know. There's a reason Veronica is back. She wants something, and it's tied to the baby. Stop." Samuel rounded on her, his frustration boiling over. What does she want with the child? Why does it matter so much? Before she could respond, a chilling howl filled the night, echoing through the trees. The maid's eyes widened in fear. "They can smell us," she gasped, fumbling in the darkness to pull him along. The ground sloped downwards, and they stumbled into a small clearing lit by the ghostly glow of the moon. Breathing hard, Samuel scanned the perimeter, searching for signs of movement. "What are we going to do?" "Listen." The maid pressed a finger against her lips. The world stood still, caught in a web of tension. Then, in the distance, muffled voices threaded through the air. Men shouting, ordering one another, their tones harsh and urgent. "They're hunting," she muttered, her voice trembling. "They know we're out here." Another low growl erupted from the treeline, closer now. Samuel could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. His heart raced as he felt the specter of his past, his own demons whispering promises of dread and despair. "What did you mean when you said there's a reason Veronica is searching for the child?" He needed answers, but insecurity clawed at him, threatening to drown him in a storm of uncertainty. "She believes the baby holds power, a connection to something beyond us." She stepped closer, her breath quaking like a leaf in the wind. Something dark. Samuel clenched his jaw, trying to steady the tumult within him. What could a baby possibly hold? "Everything," she snapped, the urgency of her mind collapsing under the weight of their fear. "Veronica is not alone in this. Others have arrived, ancient ties weaving through time, and we're caught in their threads. They want the baby for power. Her powers could change everything." The meaning of her words hit him like a freight train. His life, his family's legacy, all exposed to a force untouched by time and morality. "We can't let them find her." Just then, the darkness shifted again. Shapes loomed near the edge of the clearing, broken silhouettes moving with malevolent intent. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. "They're here." In that moment, the maid gripped his arm. Her eyes flooded with panic, and he felt the heat of her fear radiating between them. "Samuel, there's a way out. But we have to run now." Before he could protest, she turned, dragging him toward a narrow path leading deeper into the woods. As they accelerated, he could hear the crack of branches snapping, the heavy footfalls echoing behind them. The shadows followed, hungry for the very souls they sought to entrap. "What's the plan?" he panted as they dashed ahead, each heartbeat amplifying the urgency of their escape. "There's a cabin," she gasped. "An old friend. If we can reach." A gunshot rang out, splintering the air with violent rage, followed by a hiss of adrenaline, as Samuel felt himself thrust forward. "Run, Samuel, run. Will they find safety, or will they stumble right into the hunter's grasp?" The night was just beginning, and its secrets waited hungrily to unfurl. The forest closed in around them, thick and suffocating. Samuel's heart raced as they weaved through the trees, breaths coming in frantic gasps. The echoes of the gunshot still reverberated in his ears, a climax of pure panic. If they didn't reach that cabin, it would all be over. "Faster!" the maid cried, her grip tightening around his arm, urgency propelling them deeper into the monstrous embrace of the woods. He could barely see her through the shrouded blackness, but he could feel her terror radiating like a heat wave. "Why wouldn't we head back toward the mansion?" Samuel shouted over their pounding footsteps, desperation clawing at his throat. "There are more people there. We'll be safer. They're in on it. They all are." Her voice cracked, breaking over the weight of her fear. "We can't trust anyone. Not even, oh God." A low growl rumbled again, louder this time, and he dared a backward glance. The darkness shifted, glowing eyes glinting like jagged shards of ice among the trees. Something was pursuing them, a creature born from nightmares, and it was gaining ground. He pushed himself harder, branches clawing at his face and arms as they tore past. "What does Veronica want with the baby?" Samuel forced the words out, desperate for any semblance of clear thought amidst the chaos. "She believes the baby is the key to a world where she holds all the power." The maid's voice carried a shrill edge, her eyes wide with panic. "We need to get to that cabin. There's something she can't find if we get there first." As they reached a clearing, Samuel risked a quick pause, his lungs on fire. The cabin loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, nestled among a thick patch of trees. But even as relief washed over him, he noticed movement, a group of figures slinking around its perimeter. "They're here," the maid hissed, fear bubbling to the surface in her voice. Samuel's thoughts churned rapidly. "What do we do now? There's a basement." She reached for his hand, pulling him toward the cabin like a beacon in the dark. "It's our only chance." They darted toward the cabin, each step echoing their heartbeats. The figures were close, shadows blending seamlessly into the darkness. Before they could reach the door, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black. The air thickened around Samuel, suffocating him, each breath a battle. "Stop!" The voice boomed with authority, slicing through the night like a knife. Samuel instinctively stood frozen, confusion washing over him. Had they run right into a trap? "What do you want?" he forced out, every instinct screaming at him to turn and flee. But curiosity kept him pressed forward. The figure stepped into the dim glow of moonlight. Samuel's breath hitched in his throat. It was someone he recognized, a family friend, someone he trusted. But that trust felt like a distant dream after everything he learned. "Samuel, you shouldn't be here," the man said, his voice layered with dread and urgency. "You don't understand what you're involved in." "So, you do know about Veronica?" Samuel felt a rush of anger. "What does she want with thee? And it's worse than you think." The man's expression morphed from caution to undeniable fear. "She's made an alliance. You need to leave now?" A cacophony of growls erupted from the treeline, frantic and hungry. Samuel felt the earth shake beneath him, an ominous promise of danger lurking just beyond the dark. "Run, Samuel! Get to the basement!" The maid screamed, her eyes wild with adrenaline. "We're out of time." He hesitated, caught in a web of confusion. Should he trust this familiar face, or the maid who had dragged him into this nightmare? Suddenly, the ground beneath him erupted as grotesque forms burst through the foliage. Time froze, everything slowed to a crawl as Samuel faced the looming dread that filled the night with feral intent. "Choose." The family friend's eyes flickered between the closing darkness and the desperate maid by his side. Samuel's heart thundered as the ground rushed to meet him. Would he follow the one he once knew, or the unknown that promised a flicker of hope? The path fell away beneath him. Then, everything went black. With danger closing in from all sides, could he escape this grim fate? And what horrific truth awaited him if he survived? The darkness swallowed him whole, a suffocating veil that pulled Samuel into an abyss. A dreadful weight pressed against his chest, suffocating more than the chill of the night. A heartbeat pounded in his ears, the only thing that reminded him he was still alive. He felt himself falling, tumbling into nothingness until a sharp gasp shattered the void. Samuel jolted awake, the ground hard beneath him. He lay sprawled across a filthy basement floor, the air rank with mildew. Panic surged as his eyes darted around the dimly lit space. Shadows flickered, dancing across crumbling walls, murmurs echoing faintly as if the remnants of something once alive still whispered here. Samuel, a soft voice drew him back. It was the maid, her face pale and drawn as she crept toward him from a darkened corner. "You made it. What happened?" he croaked, hands trembling as he pushed himself up. "They didn't see you. I don't think they followed." She leaned against the stone wall, her breath shaky. "But they'll come for us. They always do." He looked to where she pointed, a single, cracked window barred with rusted iron. The moonlight shafts cast ghostly silhouettes of figures shifting outside. Samuel's heart raced again, fresh dread washing over him. "Who are they?" he asked, dread tight in his throat. "The followers of Veronica." She touched her trembling fingers to her lips. "She's given them power. They'll do anything to ensure the baby is found." A bitter taste filled Samuel's mouth. "The baby? We need to get out. We can't let her get him. That's what they want, Samuel. They want you to come to them." She stepped closer, urgency in her eyes. "Veronica knows about the baby's potential. She doesn't want him just for power. She wants to control him, to mold him." Samuel recoiled slightly. Control him for what? For her own twisted ambitions, immortality, dominion. She believes he's the key to unlocking something ancient, something that would make her a god. The maid's voice trembled, each word dripping with an uncomfortable truth. "We must find him first, or she'll unleash chaos." A distant howl broke the weight of silence, a chaotic blend of rage and hunger, a sound that sent chills racing down Samuel's spine. "Oh no, it's them," the maid whispered, eyes widening in terror. "They're getting close. Can't we barricade ourselves?" Samuel scanned the room frantically, seeking anything, furniture, debris that could help fortify their chances. "There's no time." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a second doorway shadowed by darkness. "We have to move now." As they darted toward it, every creak of the floorboards beneath them begged for silence. Every breath felt like a betrayal. The door creaked ominously as they eased it open and stumbled hesitantly into a narrow corridor lined with old photographs that seemed to watch them, families frozen in time, long lost to the woods. Suddenly, a figure loomed in the darkness ahead, blocking their way. "Going somewhere?" The voice was dripping with malice, sending icy fingers crawling up Samuel's spine. Samuel stepped back, heart racing. "Who are you?" "Your worst nightmare, kid." The figure stepped forward, and the dim light revealed a twisted face, green eyes glinting like a predator. As the figure lunged for them, Samuel felt the maid shove him aside with surprising strength, throwing herself onto the threat. "Run!" she screamed, grappling with the shadowy figure, fury igniting as their bodies tumbled to the ground. Samuel stumbled, caught between horror and the need to escape. The darkness behind him felt oppressive. Each heartbeat whispered a truth he desperately wanted to ignore. He couldn't just abandon her. But what if he did? With a shuddering breath, he turned to face the fight unfolding behind him. Would he be brave enough to enter the fray, or would he flee while he had the chance? The shadows shifted, and he felt the pull of the unknown as he hesitated in the corridor. Would trust be his downfall, or his salvation? The choice loomed over him like a storm on the horizon. Samuel's instincts screamed at him to run, but a deeper part of his soul rooted him in place. The maid fought fiercely, her slender form grappling with the menacing figure under the flickering light. Samuel's heart pounded, the thud echoing like a warning bell. This was not simply a physical fight. It felt like a battle for their very lives. "Samuel!" she shouted, breathing heavily as she wrestled for dominance. "Help me." He couldn't just stand there. The choice was clear: courage over cowardice. He lunged forward, adrenaline surging through his veins. He grabbed a nearby rusted metal pipe that lay uselessly against the wall and swung it toward the looming figure. "Get away from her," he shouted, his voice raw and urgent. The figure turned, eyes narrowing into slits. Samuel struck, the pipe connecting with a sickening crunch. The creature staggered, the shock momentarily slowing its advance. The maid seized the opportunity, twisting away and scrambling to her feet, desperation flashing in her eyes. "Come on. We have to go," she urged. As they darted down the narrow corridor, the air became thick with an oppressive energy, almost a tangible force that clawed at their backs. Shadows danced and flickered around them, whispering taunts, promising doom. The cacophony of distant howls grew louder, rising like a haunting chorus. They barreled into a larger room, the door slamming shut behind them. Bare walls lined with old, dusty bookshelves loomed over them, covered in cobwebs. The room felt alive, a space filled with secrets. Samuel's breath quickened as he scanned for exits. "Where do we go?" he panted, leaning against a wall. "There has to be something, a way out," said the maid, her voice steady despite the fear etched on her face. "Help me move these." She pointed to a heavy table pushed against the far wall. They could use it to block the door, perhaps by a moment's peace. Together, they shoved it, sweat beading on Samuel's brow as he struggled against the weight. Harder. She pushed under his grip, eyes wide as she seemed to sense something behind the closed door. With one final heave, the table slid into place just as a loud bang reverberated through the room. The door rattled violently, then quieted. A heavy silence fell, only the sound of their shallow breaths filling the air. Samuel's heart raced. Every second felt like an eternity. "Do you think they'll come through?" he asked, glancing toward the door. The uncertainty hung thick in the air, an unseen adversary. "We need to hide now," she said, glancing at the shelves. "Over there." They ducked behind a collection of forgotten tomes, pressing their bodies low and flat against the dust-covered floor. The tension in the room pulsed like a living thing, each heartbeat a reminder of the danger that loomed just outside. Footsteps echoed outside, slow and deliberate. Samuel's stomach churned as he strained to listen, adrenaline coursing through him like fire. A voice, low and sinister, sliced through the silence. "She knows he's here. We must find the boy." Samuel's breath caught. They weren't just after the maid. They were hunting for the baby. "If they know we're here," he whispered, dread coating his words. "We have to find him first." What if it's too late?" she said, eyes wide, searching his face for a glimmer of hope. As the footsteps drew closer, they exchanged a look fraught with urgency and fear. There was no escaping this serious reality, no way out except through it. With a sudden resolve, Samuel made the decision. They would not leave the baby to whatever fate Veronica and her followers envisioned. They had to act before time ran out. "Find him," he breathed, determination igniting within. "We're going to save him." A crack of wood splintering filled the air, the door buckling violently under an unseen weight. Heart racing, Samuel turned, knowing they had precious moments left. Just as the door burst open and a dark shadow surged into the room, Samuel whispered one last thought to the maid. "Stay close, it's not over yet." What lay ahead was unknown, but one thing was certain: fighting would be their only chance as they plunged deeper into the nightmare. But in the heart of shadows, nothing was ever as it seemed. The shadow loomed larger, filling the doorway with an unsettling darkness. Samuel's muscles tensed, his grip tightening on the rusted pipe. Whatever human-like features had once been there were now just blurred impressions in the dim light. The reality of their situation crashed in on him, more cruelly than the shadows that surrounded them. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice a tremor of defiance. To his left, the maid shifted, her presence a whisper of steel against the backdrop of fear. Samuel caught a glimpse of her determination as she adjusted her stance, readying herself. They were outnumbered, but there was no turning back. The figure stepped forward, the floorboards creaking beneath its weight. An eerie smile spread across its face, revealing teeth unnaturally sharp. "You can't escape. You think you can keep the baby from me? You don't even know what you're after," Samuel countered, the words spilling out before he could think. The creature's eyes glittered with madness. "I know exactly what I want, and you're simply in my way." The maid lunged, hurling an old vase that had been perched precariously on a nearby shelf. It shattered against the wall, sending shards spinning through the air, but the figure remained unfazed. Samuel's heart sank. They could try to fight all they wanted, but this thing had strength that felt unnatural. "Samuel!" she yelled, urgency cracking her voice. "The stairs. They lead to the attic. We have to move now." Without waiting to think, Samuel nodded. They bolted toward the back corner of the room, the table they had pushed against the door glaring like an unwilling guardian. Yet, it was too late. The air around them shimmered with dread as the figure advanced. "Foolish children," it hissed, and a chill slithered down Samuel's spine. With a desperate push, he wedged himself against the table, straining with every ounce of strength. The maid helped, both of them throwing their bodies against it to create some distance. But the wood began to crack. "Go. I'll hold it," Samuel shouted, fear twisting into resolve. "No way," she replied fiercely. "I'm not leaving you." Samuel didn't have time for arguments. "You have to find the baby." "I can't." Before he could finish, the table flew forward, slamming into the figure as it lunged. The impact echoed like thunder, but it hardly slowed it down. "Just go," he bellowed, the urgency igniting a spark within her. The maid turned, fear mingling with determination as she dashed through a narrow archway leading to the stairs. Samuel followed, barely keeping pace. The narrow corridor crawled with shadows that seemed to stretch and snap at their heels. The attic door loomed ahead. She yanked it open, and they spilled inside. Dust motes floated lazily in the dull light. But that was the least of their concerns. "Where is he?" Samuel panted, scanning the cluttered space. Old furniture and boxes were haphazardly piled, creating a maze within the confined area. "Over there," she cried, pointing toward a small cradle tucked in the corner, hidden by a tattered blanket. The sight flooded him with relief, but it was short-lived. A throaty growl curled up from the stairs. The figure had followed them. Panic washed over Samuel as he rushed to the cradle, pulling away the blanket. There lay the baby, sleeping peacefully amidst the chaos. The innocence of the child contrasted sharply with the horror edging closer. "Samuel!" The maid screamed. "We have to get out now." He lifted the baby into his arms, feeling the weight of it like a heavy anchor. The descent back down the stairs had to be quick. They turned to retreat, only to be met with a sight that stole the breath from their lungs. A wall of darkness surged forward, a storm of rage taking shape. "Leave the child!" The figure roared, its presence vibrating the very air around them. Samuel stood, frozen in place. A dangerous thought sliced through the fog of fear. What if saving the baby meant losing their lives? "Go!" The maid's voice pierced his confusion, urgency reigniting his resolve. "Run!" But just then, a shattering sound echoed, followed by a soft cry from the baby, a cry that shattered the night. Samuel's heart lunged into his throat. They were running out of time, and daylight wasn't too far behind. In the distance, thunder rumbled ominously. Would they escape with their lives? Or was the darkness finally closing in? The air was electric, filled with a tension that pushed them to their limits. Samuel cradled the baby tightly in his arms, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The maid's eyes sparkled with fear and determination as they faced the encroaching darkness swirling at the top of the stairwell. It was a force pulled from nightmares, hungry to claim what it coveted. "Samuel, there's a side window. We can escape," she shouted, pointing towards the dusty, barred opening at the far end of the attic. He nodded, urgency sparking through his veins. They had no choice. The darkness was almost upon them. "Let us go." They dashed across the room, dodging old furniture that seemed to loom like specters, memories lost in time. With a burst of adrenaline, they reached the window. Samuel fumbled with the creaky latch, heart racing. He glimpsed the shadows closing in behind them, felt the weight of dread pressing against him, suffocating. It won't budge. "Help me." The maid joined him, pulling with all her might. Just as the shadow loomed at the top of the stairs, the window creaked open, spilling moonlight into the dark. "Climb through," he urged. She squeezed through first, turning to help him. He handed the baby to her, heart hammering as he followed, squeezing his body through the narrow frame just as a guttural growl echoed behind them. The figure surged forward, anger radiating off its twisted form. "Go, go, go!" Samuel yelled as he tumbled out into the cold night air, landing awkwardly on the forest floor. The maid clutched the baby tightly, looking back up at the darkened attic. Shadows writhed, a cacophony of malicious intent echoing within the old structure. "We need to run." She took Samuel's hand, the grip firm and reassuring, guiding him away from the cursed place. They sprinted into the woods, branches whipping against their skin, hearts racing with every step. The chill of night air sharpened their senses, but also anchored them in the urgency of survival. "Where do we go?" Samuel panted, glancing over his shoulder. "The cabin. It's nearby," she gasped, her breath intertwining with the cool mist. But as they pushed through thick underbrush, the darkness seemed to pulse, thrumming with a life of its own. Samuel could almost feel the eyes of the shadows watching, waiting for a misstep. "Keep moving. We're not safe yet." He urged them forward, pushing through both exhaustion and fear as they plummeted deeper into the untamed heart of the woods. Just as they broke through a dense thicket, the cabin came into sight, a rickety silhouette against the star-studded sky. Relief surged through Samuel, but it was quickly swallowed by the trepidation of what lay ahead. "We'll barricade it," he decided, determination filling him once again. But as they darted inside, the oppressive darkness followed, swirling ominously around them. "Bar the door," the maid shouted, urgency lining her voice as they heaved a rickety table against the entrance. The sound of growling drew closer, echoing like thunder in their ears. "I need to find something to defend us," Samuel declared, sprinting towards a dusty corner filled with old tools. His hands closed around a rusted axe. It felt heavy but reassuring. The maid's voice trembled slightly, her fear palpable. "They won't stop just because we locked the door. They'll find a way in." He turned towards her, a rush of adrenaline mingling with determination. "Then we'll fight." The shadows began to press against the cabin walls, and suddenly shapes emerged, creeping through every crack, hungry for them. The air thickened, filling with whispers of the dark past clinging to the structure. "Samuel!" The maid grabbed his arm fiercely, urgency etched across her face. The baby just then, the back window shattered, and a figure lunged inside, a gaunt silhouette with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. Samuel swung the axe reflexively, the blade connecting with the figure's shoulder. It wailed, a sound that encased them in horror. "Keep it back," he shouted, his voice thunderous with desperation. Together they fought, striking and dodging, but the shadows seemed endless, unfurling like an unyielding fog. The maid moved deftly, determination lighting her auburn hair like fire. "Samuel, focus," she yelled, slicing through the haze. "We have to hold on." They pushed further back into the room, darkness swallowing pieces of hope inch by inch. But in that moment of chaos, Samuel felt something shift in the air. It was a whisper rising, a connection that resonated between him and the baby. Light began to glow from the cradle where the child slept, pulsing gently yet defiantly amidst the surrounding chaos. "Samuel!" The maid gasped, her wide eyes reflecting the luminous tendrils spilling from the baby. "It's the baby. He's awakening something." The figure flinched, retreating as the light grew stronger. Shadows writhed and contorted, and Samuel seized the moment. "We can use this." He raised the axe, harnessing the energy from the baby's light, channeling it into a powerful surge. With a shout that shook the very core of the darkness, he swung the axe through the void, and it cleaved open a fissure of light. The cabin erupted with echoes of fury as the shadows recoiled, vanishing into a swirl of despair. The darkness howled, and Samuel felt the weight lift as it surrendered. An unseen bond tethered them to the child's innocent power. They stood breathless, the glow brightening until it enveloped them, radiating warmth and safety. "We did it!" the maid cried, her joy palpable. But even as they celebrated, Samuel felt the rumbles deep within his soul, knowing the fight wasn't entirely over. He glanced at the baby, deeply aware that their journey was far from complete. New truths and revelations awaited them. Shadows of the past always lingered, but they now had the power to face their demons together. With resolve, they turned toward their next challenge, a bond forged in struggle, love, and hope. They would protect this child and uncover the truth they owed them that much. As dawn peered softly over the horizon, they stepped outside, ready to confront their future. Together, they would defy the darkness, as one. Now, before this journey fades into memory, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed that algorithm and keep the heart of this community alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. Your support means the world. Let us keep this adventure going.